Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for sticking around till the very end of the conference. We still have one panel left after this, so hang tight for that as well. And thank you so much to Erin and Pam for just putting together this amazing conference. It's been just outstanding. It's so inspiring to just see women lifting up women. All of course, amazing medical content, but this is really, I think, what in the coaching world we really want to see more of, and we're trying to cultivate. So this is the kind of event that we need to see more and more of. So thank you for doing it. It's just, the energy has been electrifying, and I'm very grateful to be part of it. I love that I get to be kind of a unique speaker in a way, because I am a coach now, but I'm also a practicing physician, and so I can kind of bring it to you from both perspectives. I'm going to just give you a little of the backdrop of my life and how I came to become a physician coach. So, of course, Sunny sets the stage yesterday, so I'll try not to repeat too many of the things that she said. But really, I do want everyone to know that coaching is an evidence-based intervention, and we're going to just be seeing more and more that that's one wonderful additional route where people can get some extra help to level up their life, even if everything's going well. So becoming a physician is very hard, but being a physician is even harder sometimes. And I think that we don't recognize that. We think once we get that MD degree, it's going to be all better. When we finish residency, then life is going to get better. Once we have the attending salary, it's going to be better. Or if I become a cardiologist, my life is going to be amazing. And wherever we go, we still have our same human brain. And so if we can learn to develop some mind management skills, there's just a lot less suffering in life, and you can reach your same goals with a lot more happiness. Women physicians, particularly, as has been mentioned during this conference, is we're paid less, have to deal with misogyny, we have to deal with being underappreciated, underrepresented, having a harder time getting a seat at the table, working twice as hard. And so particularly, I think for women, this is really important that we, even though we're doing all the right things, that we figure out how to do it with even less suffering. There's no prizes for the suffering that we're trained to do. We're programmed to come to work when we have a fever of 101, to not take bathroom breaks, really. Like, that's, every physician, woman physician particularly, knows there's just no time in clinic to go to the bathroom. Like, how is that? This is just our programming. We expect it. You're just supposed to just do everything for everybody else and not take care of yourself. And it's just time for that to change. Of course, the self-sacrifice does make us brilliant physicians, but it can be a downfall for ourselves and our families. It's time to heal the healers and really start lifting up the next generation. So how I got here, I had kind of the regular life going and became a physician by putting my head down and just doing all the right things and achieving, getting into medical school, finishing residency, getting a first job, having a family, buying my first house. And then my marriage started to fall apart. And then we got divorced and had a child with autism. And suddenly I didn't know what to do. I only knew how to keep putting that one, just doing the next thing that I was told to do. And when that happened, suddenly I knew that I needed to do something different to get my life back on track. Fortunately for me, my grandparents were my first teachers. This can make me cry. My grandmother actually studied with Gandhi in her ashram in India for 4 years. And she taught me a lot of just mindfulness and just doing the right work and right action, not expecting any particular results. My grandfather did the Salt March with Gandhi and was part of the peace movement. And he used to tell me, eat while you eat, read while you read. Don't do two things at once. That's mindfulness. That's being present in the present moment. So trying to recover from my divorce and find my way back to some normalcy, that came in very handy, as did the support, of course, of my family and my friends. I was an internist in a regular clinic and struggling to figure out how to be a single mom. And I thought, okay, I'm going to become a concierge doctor, and that's going to fix everything. I'll have way more time. I got to concierge medicine, and yeah, it was different, and some things were better, but some things were not. And it turns out I brought my same human brain that I had with me in my internal medicine clinic with me to my concierge medicine clinic. So this started to become really interesting to me as I was taking care of my patients, who some of are really strong, interesting people, Nobel Prize winners, professors, physicians, CEOs of companies. I started noticing they had similar self-limiting beliefs, and they kept thinking, chasing the when, or having different judgments about how they were showing up, and it was affecting the quality of their life, either at work or in their family lives. So then I met Sunny and was a peer coach with the California Medical Association at the beginning of the pandemic. And I had been doing my version of coaching with my patients before that, teaching them the mindfulness that I knew, and I was making good headway. Fortunately, with concierge medicine, I had long appointment types. But it just was getting stuck. They would have these beliefs and these thoughts that I just didn't know what to do with. And so then I became a coach and trained at the Life Coach School, and also trained in deep dive coaching, as well as positive intelligence. And started a business where I coach women physician leaders, and that has been just so incredibly rewarding. Women physicians are just some of my favorite people on earth, just so strong, such hardworking people, just, saving the world, and it's time to heal these healers. So now I incorporate my coaching into my practice as well as with my clients. I just share this just so you can see how it is useful in a regular physician's life. So as we develop mental fitness, then we can take on more of the challenges in life. So what I want to have you take away today by the end of the talk is that, number one, you make sense. Evolutionarily, you make sense. Number two, you are wise. And then number three, you can change. So when we have sage wisdom, and when we can learn how to tap into that and recognize how we make sense, then we can make the decision to either keep the way that we're approaching life, or we can level it up. So I'm going to also stop today and teach everybody 3 techniques to kind of increase your parasympathetic tone, decrease sympathetic response, and hopefully this is sort of like a mini mindfulness techniques, not full meditation. A lot of people just say, I can't do that, it's way too hard, I don't have time. But these are very small, simple 1-minute exercises that you can do. So as I'm talking today, think about one challenge that you have, just something in your clinical life or at home that just seems really hard. It can be something small even, like for me, charting. Just the bane of my existence. I cannot stand it. So that is better in concierge medicine. I have fewer, but they still get me. So think about one challenge like that that's just a thorn in my side. And when you think about that particular thing, just check in with yourself. When you're thinking about it, how do you feel? Maybe you can give yourself 3 descriptors. For me, with charting, I feel stressed. I feel like a victim of the circumstance of the situation that the electronic record puts us in, and I feel just defeated. That's how I was before coaching anyway. So let's see if we can shift that just slightly today. So how do you make sense? From evolutionary neurobiology, basically we have 80% of our thoughts every day, 60,000 thoughts a day, are negative. And that's just in our wiring. Because, if there's a lion coming after you in the time of the hunter-gatherer, you wanted to make sure that you were scared and made a fear-based decision to run away. And so anyway, we all have our personality traits, and many of you may have done the Myers-Briggs assessment or Strength Finders or some of those other ones. Positive intelligence is one that I have used, and I'm going to kind of describe that framework. So when we have negative emotions, which we all do, the 80% of our thoughts, the main one is the judge. So we all judge ourselves, we judge others, we judge our circumstance. And from that, then there can be imposter syndrome. I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I here? Or with the charting example, I'm the only one who does this so slowly. I don't know why I can't get them done, or I should know better by now. Some of the should statements or I'm not enough statements kind of come to mind. We have, for physicians particularly, there's a lot of all or nothing thinking, and we tend to catastrophize sometimes, and it bleeds over into things like our simple charting as well. Like this note has to be perfect. Somebody's going to read it, and they're going to, think I don't know what I'm talking about, or some such thing. Other saboteurs that we have, in addition to the judge, as that inner critic is talking in our mind. If you stop to start noticing, you'll hear that. You'll see that for physicians especially, we have a tendency to be achievers, but when that strength gets used and abused, it becomes a hyperachiever tendency. And we think that, again, we're going to be happy or everything's going to be better when we've achieved something. And that, that led us to get through medical school and residency. But it can also meet us when we're doing our charts at night. I have to do this perfectly. So which is also the perfectionist. Every detail has to be correct. And the people pleaser, somebody might read this. What if they think I don't know what I'm talking about? Again, something like that. And then there are other traits that we all can have, like victim mentality or controller. We think we can control every element of our life. So how has this served us? Do you think pain is good? Does anybody think pain is a good thing? Yeah, it really is, right? If you put your hand on a hot stove, you want to feel the pain. You don't want to keep it there, though, or that's the suffering. So pain is good, and these negative emotions, they serve a purpose. From an evolutionary perspective, it gave us a survival advantage. Like we were programmed to amplify the negative. It was better for our distant ancestors to notice the colors of a snake than it was to notice the colors of a beautiful flower, right? So, of course, evolutionarily, it makes sense. How did it make sense for us? Of course, as achievers. All of you made it through medical school and residency and fellowship and are progressing through the academic tracks. When we judge ourselves, we can think critically and make really very precise decisions. The all or nothing thinking, well, in medicine, things really are life and death. So we really don't want to make those mistakes. So of course it serves us very, very well. So you make sense and nothing has gone wrong when that inner critic is there telling you that you should do better or you should do it perfectly. And yet it's with suffering. Our pre-programmed innate decision-making comes from the limbic system and the amygdala and parts of the left brain. And they really do motivate us to progress and to do things well, but with negative emotions. So you generate success, but not necessarily with happiness. On the other hand, we also have a wise mind or a sage brain. And when we can engage our sage brain, then we can make decisions using our middle prefrontal cortex and parts of the right brain. And then you are motivated to make changes through positive emotions. And so there's a lot less suffering in that. The challenge is how do we move from amygdala-based decision-making to the prefrontal cortex? The good news is that we have neuroplasticity and we can retrain our brains. And so that's sort of the techniques that I want to show you today, how you can sort of learn to slow down and start to make decisions from love and not from fear. All right, so this is mindful exercise, the first one that I want to show you. So if everyone doesn't mind, just sort of sit comfortably in your chair. And if you're comfortable, close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths, just in and out. And the reason we want to do this is it allows us to create that pause, to be present, and to make space to break those old habits and those old pathways. So keep taking some deep breaths. And we're going to use a tactile technique. Take your first finger and your thumb on each of your hands, and then rub them together just lightly as your eyes are still closed and you're taking deep breaths. With really great attention, can you feel the ridges on your finger? Or do they feel smooth? Just be there, be present with yourself. When you practice this, when you're feeling relaxed, like here at the conference, you're building that neural pathway that hopefully then you can pull this out in real time when you're under stress. You can go ahead and come back to the room. How did that feel? Relaxing? I know we're all pretty relaxed here at a conference already, but just that it is something like when you're in the moment, if you've done this during regular time, just maybe between patients, take a few seconds and just rub your finger and just be present with yourself, or just make an association, and then you can learn to use that and calm your nervous system whenever you're in the middle of a stressful clinic day or busy with your kids, wherever it may be. So the second part is you are wise. We all have sage wisdom inside of us, and sometimes, most of the time, you can find it and make the next best choice, but sometimes we forget about it. The thing I like most is the sage perspective, and that is that even when negative things happen, if we're open to it, there can always be a gift or an opportunity. And I think that that's just such an amazing way to think about life. Sometimes it's really hard in the moment, and it may not be then, but if you can just be open to the fact that something good might come of this, you'll be in a lot less suffering position. So has anybody heard the stallion story? There's a story of a farmer in imperial China. He had a very small farm with a son and one stallion. So one day, his stallion ran away. And all the neighbors came over to him and said, farmer, what bad news? What are you going to do? And the farmer said, good news, bad news, who's to know? So the neighbors went away. And the son went off to look for the horse, came back a few days later, and he had found 4 stallions. So suddenly the neighbors come over and say, farmer, what good news? How fortunate are you? You have 4 stallions. And the farmer says, good news, bad news, who's to know? So now this farmer's son is trying to tame these 4 stallions, and he falls and he breaks his leg. So guess who comes over? Those neighbors. And they say, oh, farmer, what bad news? Now you know what the farmer said. Good news, bad news, who's to know? So next, it's the imperial army comes into town looking for all the able-bodied young men. And guess who was not able to be taken off to war? The neighbors came over this time, didn't even say anything. Good news, bad news, who's to know? So the moral of that story is obviously everything is on your perspective. Whichever perspective you give more attention to and believe will come true. The saboteur, the negative emotion, will say, this is bad news. And the sage will say, this is really, really good news. So whichever one you practice can really become true. So we can develop these sage powers by practice as well. Some of the powers are compassion, empathy, curiosity, creativity, and then calm, laser-focused attention, keeping our why in mind, like deciding why you're choosing to do the things that you're doing. Okay, one more little exercise. Everybody just maybe for a second close your eyes and think of somebody you love. Can you envision what they look like, their dimples in their cheek, the clothes they're wearing, maybe even how they smell? Okay, open your eyes. So for how many of you was that person you? That's a little different take on Sunny's, what organ does the heart feed first, right? So if it wasn't you, do you believe that you're as worthy of love as the person you're envisioning? It's something that we as physicians are not trained to do. Like, you just are not supposed to think about your own self-worth. So the sage power of self-compassion is just one of my favorites, and the one that I want to focus on here today. And what makes us valuable or worthy? In the coaching world, we're taught, really, it's just because we exist. We're human beings, not human doings. And we seem to forget that. And we just think that it's dependent on if we get into medical school, if we get that fellowship we want, if we get the next grant, that's what's going to make us worthy. But it's not true. You're just worthy because you exist. And this is, of course, all recycled wisdom that comes from all the ancient traditions. And yet we all forget. So bringing it back to my charting example, because they're the bane of my existence, really, truly, whether they get done well or not, whether they take me a short time or a long time, it's not a reflection of me as a human in any way, shape, or form. The first step is, again, to recognize that inner critic, that inner voice, and then to stop and think, is there a different response that would serve you better? Notice the judge, notice the shoulds, notice the enoughs. I didn't get enough done. At the end of the day, that's one that comes to my mind a lot. In the morning, I wake up and think, I didn't get enough sleep. These things are not very helpful. I should have done more. I should have known better. I should be able to finish all my charts quickly. Why did everyone else get them done more quickly than I did? I'm seeing some nods. I am not alone. So, all right. So we make sense. Of course, evolutionarily, it makes sense. And yet we are wise. We can be masterpieces just as we are and still be works in progress. One of my other favorites, things to think about is imagine yourself as a younger child. If you have that picture of you, would you talk to yourself, to your young child, whether it is your own child or yourself as a child, would you talk to them that way? Just a really good reminder. You're worthy and wise. Okay, one more mindful moment exercise. Again, the point is to pause and be present, and to break that cycle of being stuck in the shoulds and taking a moment to honor yourself. So close your eyes again. Put your feet flat on the ground and make sure your bottom is firmly seated in the chair. Take those few deep breaths. And put your hand to your heart. You can do one hand or two hands. Keep taking those deep breaths. Breathe in, breathe out. Feel the rising and falling of your chest. Maybe as you're breathing in, notice the temperature of the air as it goes into your nostrils. And breathe out. And notice the temperature as you exhale. Just pay close attention to the breath and to your hand on your heart. Breathe in, breathe out, and relax, relax, relax. So healing is in self-love. It's in honoring that inner child, having self-compassion, kindness for yourself. Recognize our common humanity. Okay, feel free to open your eyes. And how did that feel? Feel good? Hopefully everybody's going to be really relaxed. You're going to have to stand up and dance around to be awake for the next panel discussion. Okay, the last point is you can choose. So we get to intentionally decide if we want to develop new automatic habits and new automatic patterns to create that calm amidst the chaos of our medical lives or our family lives. And the circumstance is just something that happens in our life. And it's really meaningless until we attach a thought to it. And then when we have that thought, that's what creates our feelings. So if we can, again, be on to the thoughts, that negative inner critic, then you can take that moment, put your hand on your heart, or take a few deep breaths, touch your fingers, come center, and then decide to take a different response, a sage response with your sage powers, finding the gift or the opportunity. With the card charting, when I stop and think, this stinks, I can't believe I have to do this late at night. And the system is making me use this electronic record. It's really, truly, those are all just my thoughts. The charting is just a neutral thing that has to get done. And we can do it with heaviness and suffering, or we can do it with lightness. When I stop and do it with suffering, then I end up not wanting to do it. I'm complaining more. I'm stopping and looking at Facebook, having a snack in the middle of clinic rather than getting my charting done. Whereas if I don't give my power over to it, then I'm able to get them done more quickly. I think this is not, doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to get done. So just to review, I love the tennis ready position description. It's very hard to go from a backhand straight to a forehand. Does anybody play tennis here? Know that to be true, right? Yes, you gotta come to center to a tennis ready position. So I like to think about this whole process of noticing our inner critic, noticing our saboteurs, noticing the thoughts that go along with it and create the negative emotions, the negative feelings, and then pausing, getting back to ready position, and then taking your forehand or taking the sage response. It's really a pretty simple process. But whenever you have any negative emotion, if you just stop and notice what the thoughts are, that's really half the battle. Because then you can decide whether you want to keep those thoughts. Engage your present moment awareness with those mindful techniques, and then take a sage response. Everything can be converted to a gift or an opportunity. Two thought leaders who I really admire, and many of you have probably heard of, were both Holocaust survivors. Dr. Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, has the very famous quote that coaches all love to quote, and many of you may have heard of, and that is that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. We can take back our power when we respond rather than react. So that's Dr. Viktor Frankl. The other is Dr. Edith Eger, or Edie. She happens to be my neighbor's mother, and she wrote the book, The Choice, some of you may have heard of. And she says, she was, of course, she had to dance for Mengele in Auschwitz, so she knows what it's like to be a prisoner. And yet she says we're all prisoners of our own mind, and the key is in our pocket. So take that key out, practice it, and you don't have to suffer as much. If you can every day work to find thoughts that are 1% or 5% less negative, imagine where you'll be at the end of a year. But the first thing is that we have to stop and notice that this is the way we show up in the world to begin with. Sometimes we're so unaware of it. And then the goal is, instead of taking a day or 3 days to recover from something, you can take an hour or 3 hours, and then a minute or 3 minutes, and then maybe just a second. So that's the goal. And if you're not changing, you're choosing. So it's a choice. So, did you all think of that one thing that tortures you like charting tortures me? The bane of your existence? How would this look for you? If you would intentionally choose a thought that served you. Again, with the charting, when I think, they need to be perfect, then I have anxiety and I stay late and I, get on Facebook and don't get my work done. And that leads slowly and steadily to burnout. But instead, if I have the same circumstance, the charts that have to get done, And I think this doesn't have to be perfect. It can be much lighter and feel calm. You can work more efficiently and finish early. So how about the one thing that you thought of? Can you think of how you could reframe it in your mind? And how would that serve you? All right, one last mindful moment exercise. I love this one. This is my favorite. So again, close your eyes. Put your feet flat on the ground. Make sure you're comfortably seated. And take a few deep breaths in and out. And listen. Just listen to the sound you hear farthest away from you. Maybe it's the clanking of some dishes outside the door, or the hum of the air conditioning. Now, bring that attention in a little bit closer to you. Keep taking those deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And maybe notice the sound of your own breath. Or some other sound nearby. And just focus on that for another few seconds. How did that feel? You can open your eyes and come back. I think that one is so powerful. All you have to do is just listen to a sound, and suddenly you're just, drop into your own body and get out of your head. That's what these exercises are all about. Again, to stop, pause, be present, and break that cycle and choose a different way. So you make sense evolutionarily. You're not alone. We are all in this together. You are wise and worthy just as you are. And you can choose. You don't have to suffer. This can all be done. You can have the same situation and feel happier. So if you find yourself suffering, it's okay. It makes sense. Just get present and make a different choice. With that suffering, you either, I think Sunny said this yesterday, you either get the lesson you need or the result you want. Either way, it's okay. So we practice these techniques in neutral time, just a minute here or there. Maybe when you're washing your hands in between patients, maybe as you're taking the first bite of your food, just be really present with yourself. And it's amazing how much that engages your parasympathetic nervous system and can just let you be more present and ready to make a wise decision for yourself. The hand to the heart, the touch, and the sound. So I hope that at the end of this, you can all envision a more calm response to your thorn in your side. And I hope that you'll stop and think how you make sense and be kind to yourselves. Thank you so much for listening today.